This program is brought to you by Stanford University. Please visit us at stanford.edu.
And I'm Lisa Chamberlain. I'm Assistant Professor of Pediatrics and General Pediatrics. I do a lot of my community work, or my clinical work in the community in East Palo Alto, and have a lot of interest in community interventions around obesity and policy, and how physicians can have influence on policy. So that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. So anyway, thank you very much everyone for coming, and thank you to Tom and Michelle for asking us to come and give the nutrition and physical activity policy update. So I know we all come from different backgrounds, so it was a great idea to introduce ourselves, but we're all here for a shared reason, and that is that we're interested in the obesity epidemic and what we can do. This epidemic, like any epidemic, cannot be controlled at the level of the individual. Cholera was not controlled at the level of the individual, and neither will obesity. We all do important and life-changing work with our patients one-on-one. But we need to also be working at the level of policy, because that's really where we're going to be able to stem the tide of the new cases, so that those new cases stop coming through the door. And that's really what we're here to talk about. So our discussion today revolves around the societal factors that have resulted in increasing weight and what we can do to change them. That's us today. So I thought we'd start with this quick schematic just to kind of give an overview of the different levels of intervention. And this pyramid depicts the number of patients that we are able to reach. On the left is the downward pointing arrow, the reach, so to speak, from low to high, and cost associated per individual case impacted, upward going arrow here on the right. And in the middle are all the different levels at which we can impact obesity. We can, starting at the bottom, through health policy, influence a large number of people, basically reaching everyone, and moving up, looking at media, social marketing, ecological and environmental impact and changes, working at community and the neighborhood level, and then you start moving into the more traditional health systems, health both with incorporating health activities and health education, primary care, and specialty care. And I'm proud to say that I think at Stanford we span this pyramid very well. Today we are going to be focusing kind of on the blue areas and the blue tiers, but this is not a passive discussion. There will be quite a bit of opportunity for you all to take action today. We have, depending on the things we're talking about, have letters prepared to go to California state legislators. We have letters for our federal legislators, a letter to the American Academy of Pediatrics, and a potential participation in writing an opinion editorial piece. So this is a very active policy discussion, and feel free to join in and add your voice as you like, or not as you like. So we've broken this talk down, getting started, into the three different segments. We're going to talk about recent legislative triumphs, and Michelle Oppen is going to talk about that. Next step opportunities. These are policies that we think will be impacting kids in the next 5 to 10 years. So kind of the policies that are right on the horizon that look like they've got some momentum. And then I'm going to conclude looking all the way future upstream, looking at what kind of hope we have for future generations. All right, so with that, I'll hand things over to Michelle.
So I'm going to start off by talking about the WIC food package revisions that took place in 2006. And WIC is the Women, Infants, and Children's Program. It provides food vouchers to pregnant women, mothers, and children up to the age of 5. And in 2006, there was an opportunity to change the food packages that were in existence. They hadn't been changed in about 25 years, and a lot of people organizations got together, including the Institute of Medicine, to put together some serious revisions, and luckily most of them went through. So they're calling it a final interim rule, but it's pretty much finalized. It will be official once it officially needs to be implemented by August of 2009, and then there's a little time to make some tweaks if any adjustments need to be made. So for the first time, this allowed women with vouchers to purchase fruits and vegetables. This was never really part of the package before. To purchase whole grains and soy products, promote lower fat and lower sugar, offer multicultural food choices, incentives for breastfeeding, which was another big change. And it actually allows states to work with farmers markets and farm stands, which is another big plus to the changes that were made. And this is just some examples, maybe a little difficult to read, of the types of changes. This is, the left side is the current package before the changes were made, and the right side has the revisions to the packages. And the main differences really are reducing the higher fat and higher calorie products, and increasing things like fruits and vegetables and whole grain options. So you can see that before there were no vouchers, no money allocated for fruits and vegetables, and now for children, it's still not much, but $6 a month can be spent on fruits and vegetables, which really is significant comparing the two. Reduction in cheese and milk, and the milk that is being suggested as lower fat compared to whole milk options were always available before that. And then you can see similarities for the food packages for pregnant women. Again, reductions in the higher fat, higher calorie, and here pregnant women are given $8 worth of vouchers for fruits and vegetables, another change, and an increase in whole grains. And then for breastfeeding women, they're actually given incentives. So women who are fully breastfeeding are incentivized by giving higher value in vouchers, which is pretty huge, and just basically able to buy a lot more food if they are breastfeeding than if they're using some of the WIC vouchers to get formula. So there was a huge advocacy effort to get people to participate in making the suggestions to changes for the food package. And actually in April, there's going to be a big conference in Los Angeles put on by the California WIC Association and Policy Link. And I have the flyer here. So if anyone is interested and able to attend in LA, I think it'll be worthwhile. They're really going to be talking about not only the changes that have been made, but any opportunities around that. So they really are talking about how that can affect reductions in childhood obesity and how this can influence other public health programs that can go hand in hand. So it's pretty exciting. So if anyone is available, the flyer's over here. So I'm going to move on to some older kids. This is looking at school food and beverage standards, which has really been discussed for the past few years. And this is a little history of what's been happening since 2001, all the legislation that's been introduced, really starting with SB 19, which really went through banning the sale of junk food and soda in all schools, and then kind of got tweaked down to just be elementary schools. And it actually did pass in 2001, but it never was actually implemented. So SB 19 was really the impetus to bring on SB 12 and SB 965, which some of you may have heard about, and I'll go into more detail about that. SB 677 was really the ban of the sale of soda in elementary, middle, and junior high school. So again, high schools are missing from this, which tends to happen a lot. Once a bill is introduced, all the schools are mentioned, and then it kind of gets tweaked down to the lower level schools. So I'm going to talk about SB 12 and SB 965, which again, some of you may have heard about in 2005. This was really the first time that nutrition standards outside of the school lunch program were developed. So this was to create some standards for any products that were being sold outside of the federal school lunch and school breakfast program. And 965 was all about the beverages. And this was really a big step in recognizing that the obesity epidemic was not just a personal choice thing, it actually was responsibility of schools and other organizations to do something about it as well. So the standards I'm going to talk about actually did go into effect this past school year for the food and for 50% of the beverages, and then 100% of the beverage standards have to go into effect by 2009. Maybe a little difficult to read, but this is basically what the standards are. There's some slight differences between, there's some chairs back here, so, slight differences between elementary schools and middle, junior, and high schools, but basically allowing nuts, eggs, cheese, fruits and vegetables as long as they're not fried, and beans, but for everything else, which they're calling dairy and whole grain items, these are the standards that are set. So 35% of calories from fat, 10% from saturated fat, 35% from sugar, and each portion couldn't be more than 175 calories. And then for beverages, it's really just that at least 50% have to be at least 50% of the beverage has to be fruit or vegetable, 100% fruit or vegetable based without added sweetener, and water is okay, and milk is okay, as long as it's 2% or less fat. The difference is that for fundraising events, as long as it's off the school premises or done a half hour after the end of the school day, all these standards are kind of lost, so everything else can happen. It's really just during the school day that this has to take place. So the only difference with the older grades is that they increased the calories proportion size to 250 calories, and they also added in kind of a meal component since there's more non-school lunch meals served in middle schools and high schools. And then they added electrolyte replacement beverages like Gatorade. So elementary schools, Gatorade is not allowed, but middle and high schools, Gatorade. I believe Gatorade still meets the standard of having no more than 42 grams of added sweetener. So that's another big difference. And again, as long as foods or beverages are sold off school premises for fundraising sales or for events and things like that, or 1/2 hour at the end of the school day, then the standards do not have to be met. So, and that includes things in vending machines, student stores, and even in the cafeteria. So they can kind of go back to sell other things after the end of the school day. So that's kind of what's been going on for the past couple years. Right now, just this past October, there was some legislation passed to ban trans fats in schools. So that kind of takes it a step further from what SB 965 originally, SB 12 originally said about trans fats. Another bill that's being looked at right now is requiring school breakfast for all severe needs schools. So all schools basically that have 40% of their kids getting free or reduced meals would meet that requirement, and this bill will require the school to serve breakfast. The Child Nutrition Promotion and School Lunch Protection Act really is looking at a lot of the things I talked about with SB 12, but at a national level. So really changing nationally the nutrition standards for food served outside of the school lunch program. And I actually have a letter that we're sending to Senator Harkin, who is sponsoring this legislation, to let him know that we support it, and if there's anything we can do to give more information, we're happy to do so. So we're going to pass that around. And then finally, the Healthy Students Act of 2007 was introduced by Barbara Boxer, and it's still kind of sitting right now waiting to go to hearing, and I actually communicate with their staff. If it doesn't go in by the end of this year, they're going to reintroduce it. And it's actually very similar to Harkin's bill. The only difference is she's adding in a physical activity component to it, so it's looking at both what's served for school food and physical activities. So that's something else that you can look into. And finally, I'm just going to mention quickly, for those of you who don't know about the school wellness policy, which is officially called the Child Nutrition and WIC Reauthorization Act of 2004. This really asks schools who participate in the National School Lunch or Breakfast Program, which is most school districts in the country, to require them to establish a local wellness policy that sets goals for nutrition education, physical activity, foods and beverages sold on campus. So this goes really well with SB 12 and SB 965 in California. School-based activities for wellness for students, and then it had a piece on community involvement. So school districts in this area, definitely, and most school districts in the country should have school wellness committees. And it is an opportunity for healthcare professionals to get involved in their districts and participate, and I know a lot of people have. So school districts have written this policy. They needed to do that by the start of the 2006 to 2007 school year, and the school districts themselves are actually responsible for compliance. You can't see it very well, but this is an example. This is the Santa Clara Unified School District's wellness policy. So this is great, but of course there are some challenges that go along with the school wellness policy. It's really a document. It's in writing what the school strives to do as far as nutrition and physical activity and wellness goes, but the challenges are, of course, the implementation and evaluation. Just because they have it written on paper, there's no funding attached, so it's very difficult for districts to figure out how to implement their policies, and then, of course, how to evaluate them. Again, resources are a little low. There was no funding attached to the school wellness policy. And then, having staff available to actually implement them is difficult as well. And the accountability piece, school districts are responsible for making sure that they're compliant, but there really isn't a national accountability effort. So that's something else that is a challenge and hopefully would be worked on in the future. So I'm going to turn it over to Sophia, who's going to talk about some of the current and future policy issues.
We're not going to do too much physical education, because not too much has been passed necessarily, but the one thing that was passed was SB 601 by Torlakson. It was signed into law in October 2007, and the key points is that it increases physical education reporting to the government and legislature, because the government of California is required so many minutes per week per different grade level, and in the past they weren't necessarily reporting were they compliant or not, and they do collect the data, but I guess it just wasn't going anywhere. So now it's going to be reported on an annual basis to the government and legislature so that people can look at it and make them a little more accountable, and it will also be part of the report cards that they do for each of the schools, and so that information will be available. Unfortunately, the original bill had this wonderful section which established a professional development program for K through 12 teachers who provide PE instruction and for administrators and implementing it, but unfortunately in the ugliness of politics it was amended and they lost that important section, and part of it is, given the deficit in California, that would have required a lot more funding than just increasing reporting requirements. So in the future, I think our goal would be to bring back the Part 1 that unfortunately got amended out. Snack tax background, just so you know, the advertising budget is $1 million a year for the 5 a Day campaign, which, as you may or may not have heard, promotes fruits and vegetables. In comparison, the soft drink industry spends 600 times that amount per year, and a small subset of that is Coke and Diet Coke, for example, at $154 million. The restaurant industry spends greater than $3 billion a year on advertising, and that is 300,000 times our national dedication to promoting fruits and vegetables. Kool-Aid alone is 19 times, Lay's potatoes chips is 56 times, and M&M candies is even greater than potato chips at 67 times what we spend as a society to promote fruits and vegetables. So the premise of a tax would be that you tax foods that are high in calories, fat, or sugar, and then you subsidize taking that money that you get, healthful foods or programs. And with a steep tax, of course, you're going to result in decreased consumption. And that would also increase the funding that you can use towards funding healthful food or bringing local food to people, as well as other healthy activity, healthy promotion kind of programs. A small tax is more politically feasible and would still generate a considerable amount of money. Why drinks and snack foods? Soft drinks and snack foods, as you know, add unneeded calories to the diet. They replace nutritious foods such as low-fat milk or fruit, and they don't provide significant levels of nutrients. Where does the money go? Most of them go towards the general funds of the state. So this is usually done at the state level. However, West Virginia has a soft drink tax that actually goes to medical, dental, and nursing schools. And Tennessee has a percentage of their soft drink tax go to highways. No jurisdiction thus far uses revenues to subsidize the prices of healthful foods. So this would be novel, and this is where we're going in the future. It's not a new idea. Interestingly enough, in California in 1933, they applied the sales tax to soda because they don't consider soda a food. It's a non-food. And currently, at the current sales rate, it generates $218 million a year. But that goes towards the general fund, so it just gets sucked up into the giant abyss. In 1951, West Virginia put a 1 cent per liter soft drink, fruit drink, and chocolate milk, and 80 cents per gallon of syrup paid by manufacturers and wholesalers. So these are different people to put the money on. Who are you going to tax, the consumer, or are you going to tax a wholesaler, the manufacturer? In the 1960s, we saw a wave in Texas, sales tax on soft drinks, diluted juices, and candy. Tennessee, gross receipts from soft drinks and soft drink ingredients. New Jersey and New York have a sales tax on candy soft drinks, and New York added anything less than 70% fruit juice. And also they have Missouri and Indiana had similar stuff. In the 70s, Kentucky and Virginia came on board. 80s, Minnesota, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Washington State. In the 90s, Arkansas, Chicago, the city, DC, and Maine. The history of the soda tax in California: soda, again, was a non-food and therefore subject to the 2.5% sales tax at that time. But as sales tax increases in California, it also increases. And so currently is at 7.25. It's collected at general state revenues. In 1991, the people of the state of California passed the 8.25 sales and use tax on candy and snack foods. However, it was really confusing because they gave them a list of thousands of different things, and this is on the list and this is not on the list. And the example here is popped popcorn and Milky Way bars are taxed. Good, but unpopped popcorn and Milky Way ice cream bars are not. So, you know, as a consumer and as a person dealing with it, it was just very difficult. However, it did generate $200 million in its first year. However, snack sales dropped an estimated 10%, which I think is a good thing. But in 1992, 60% of Californians voted to repeal the tax, secondary to lobbying by the California Grocers Association, which said it was a pain in the butt to try to administer, and the newly formed Don't Tax Food Coalition. So watch out for these names of these groups, you know, that sometimes sound benign but actually have other implications. So the policy issue of a soda and snack tax actually did come up again in 2002 by Senator Ortiz. However, the bill died, and the proposal was a 2-cent tax on top of the sales tax per 12 ounce of soda. It would have generated $342 million a year into a fund, 50% of which would have went towards school health programs and after-school activities, which would have hopefully replaced funds that schools currently have to have pouring contracts, which means they've signed up with soda companies they will sell this amount of soda. So we were hoping to replace that with these funds, and so that they wouldn't have to have these soda contracts. And then 50% would fund public health and childhood obesity prevention programs outside of schools. Unfortunately, the bill died, and maybe we can encourage our California legislature to consider it again. The next steps that are on the horizon, Gavin Newsom, the mayor of San Francisco, has proposed a soda tax. Unfortunately, he's targeting just high fructose corn syrup, and we've heard lately from our endocrinologist that sucrose is just as bad as high fructose corn syrup. So perhaps the battle will be to expand it to just any sugar-containing drinks, including juice, and not just high fructose corn syrup. So this is a menu quiz for you guys. Don't peek ahead, but please write down your 4 answers, and then I'm going to tally you guys as to how you compared to a California sample of registered voters. Which of Denny's breakfast items below has the fewest calories? Ham and cheddar omelet, country fried steak and eggs, 3 slices of French toast with syrup and margarine, 3 pancakes with syrup and margarine. Okay? In your mind. Which of Chili's restaurant items has the least salt? There's going to be 4 questions, so I suggest you write it down, but if you can keep it in your head, that's good. Cajun chicken sandwich, classic combo chicken and steak fajitas, guiltless chicken platter, or smoked turkey sandwich. We all have test-taking skills, given that we're highly educated, so don't go for, Which Romano's macaroni grill item has the most fat? Lasagna, chicken Caesar salad, pasta classico with sausage and peppers, or barbecue chicken pizza. Which has the most calories? 2 Big Macs, 2 Egg McMuffins, 1 large chocolate shake, 4 regular hamburgers. All right, everybody got your answers in your head? Because
there's a bunch of dietitians in the room.
Oh, well, the dietitians are ringers, so we may have to take you guys out of the sample. So, the answer to which has the fewest calories is country fried steak and eggs at 464 calories compared to your French toast with syrup and margarine at 1,000 calories. At Chili's, which ones has the least amount of salt? Not the guiltless chicken platter, but the Cajun chicken sandwich at 2,220 milligrams, which is still no laughing matter. And more, to me, it looks like a technicality. I mean, these are all pretty comparable and scary. Macaroni grill, most fat was the chicken Caesar salad. As I tell my patients, if you're gonna do the salad with Caesar's dressing or ranch, you might as well just eat the hamburger. So chicken Caesar salad is 69 grams. Which one has the most calories? 1 large chocolate shake at 1,160 calories. So I'm going to take a quick poll of you guys. How many of you got 1 correct? At least 1. Keep your hands up, and we're going to do like an attrition thing. So that's looking like 90%. Wonderful. How many of you got 2 correct? Keep your hands up. Ooh, we got about 50%. Of course, we're a well-educated crew, Center of Healthy Weight, and some RDs in here. All right, how many got 3 correct? Oh, we're down to 3 people out of a room of maybe 25, so 10% of you guys. And how many got 4 correct? 1 person. Good job. Oh. Repeat taker, that's not right. So the California Center for Public Health Advocacy commissioned a research of 523 registered California voters, and they scored, not a single respondent answered all 4 questions correctly, but they had taken it for the first time. And less than 1% answered 3 of the questions, 5% answered 2 of the questions correctly, and approximately 68% were not even able to answer a single question correctly. And scores were equally poor regardless of education or income levels. So the myth that only uneducated people are susceptible to this is obviously wrong, proved by this room and proved by the survey that they did. And they found that 84% of Californians support requiring fast food and chain restaurants to post nutritional information on menus and menu boards. And support was for mandatory menu labeling was strong among Democrats, Republicans, and independents. So something we can share common ground. Menu labeling, SB 120 Padilla, unfortunately was vetoed by Republican Governor Schwarzenegger. The key points, but yes, we will get there. The key points are that restaurant chains that have 15 plus locations in the state have to print calories on their menu board. So anything that's up, when you walk in, that's called a menu board. And then more nutritional information has to be printed on the menu, such as fat content, salt, and other issues. Ironically, this was a key recommendation of the governor's own obesity prevention plan, which he vetoed. And the next steps is actually, as of 11 o'clock this morning, Senator Padilla, Migden, and one other senator announced that they are reintroducing this measure, and hopefully we can, with public pressure and education, commit Governor Schwarzenegger to sign on. Cities that are already doing this, New York City Board of Health is ready to begin on this. They had arguments, they sued and went to court and everything, and now it's clear and ready to run on March 31st of this year. Next cities and counties that are considering it are Philadelphia, Maryland's Montgomery County, New York, Nassau, and Westchester County, so New York is very progressive. Oregon's Matoma County, which includes Portland, San Francisco City and County, Santa Clara County, and San Mateo County. So the local efforts in Santa Clara County, in November, Santa Clara County Supervisor Liz Nist asked County Health Department to come up with a new rule. In December, the 5-member Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to ask county staff to craft a menu labeling ordinance. And in March, this will be heard in the Health and Hospital meeting, and in April, the Board of Supervisors meeting. San Francisco City and County, the Board of Supervisors as of February 7th is considering this, sponsored by Tom Amiano, and it's basically the same thing that's happening in New York. They're basically taking the information that is done well in New York and past the courts in New York and passing it on a county-by-county basis because we can't do it on a statewide basis. So our advocacy efforts, we're going to hand out 3 different folders. Please make sure you sign all 3 if you're interested. We're writing a letter to Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and San Francisco County supporting their efforts. And this is a website, although run by the restaurant organization, which is totally against the menu labeling, but is very up to date on the issues. So they know what's happening on what date. And so this is actually a good resource to go to know what the status of these bills are, but not necessarily what our take as health professionals should be.
All right, so great discussion. So we've kind of talked about things that have already passed and things that are on the horizon. I'm going to talk about things that maybe might impact the next generation of kids. So things that'll impact the children who possibly haven't been born yet, or the really little ones. And Tom likes to talk about ultimate stealth interventions, and I'm sure many of you have heard him say that, and I really like it as a term and a concept, which is trying to create, a dance class or a play or something, so kids are busy working on that, and they're not watching TV, and they're not eating snacks, and as a result, they lose weight. So it's an intervention, but it's just changing the culture of what's going on. And I think what our nation needs, if we're really going to try to turn the tide on obesity, is a nationwide stealth intervention. We need to change the way that we build our environment, and we need to change the way that we make and process food. Otherwise, we're just not going to get ahead of this. And for instance, the model of taking 30 minutes out of your day to go and exercise 5 times a week is just not replicatable for a lot of people. It's not replicatable for people who live in areas where that's not safe, or people who are really pressed for time. If you have the luxury of time and the luxury of income, yeah, it sounds like a great idea, and a lot of people try to do that. And everyone else tries, can't, and then they have the added guilt that they can't. It's the same thing with food. It's a great idea to have the income to be able to go and to go to farmers markets, to go to Whole Foods or these kinds of stores that provide really healthy, non-extra infused with different kinds of additives. But as I've discovered as I've moved into trying to buy healthier food, it goes bad really fast. So you're constantly at the grocery store. And again, so it's a matter of time. It's a matter of resources. And so again, if these are opportunities that only exist for certain parts of our population, we're just not going to get there. So what I'm talking about today is I'm going to try to talk a little bit about its big picture, reshaping the built environment and reforming agriculture policy. So let's talk a little bit about the built environment first, and talk specifically about schools. So until I'd really kind of gotten into this about 6 months ago, I had never thought of citing, a site, as a verb, but school siting is this idea of where you put a school. So where you build new schools. And this is a screenshot from the state of California that talks about sustainable schools. And how they define school siting is that it involves both the decision of where you put your school and how you choose to orient it on the site. And this is a really important issue when you're thinking about building a new school, because the siting impacts every aspect of the school: the direct environmental aspect, energy impact, and indoor air quality. So the state is aware of it and are looking at it. One thing that has happened over the last 20 years is that where schools are built is very different from where they used to be built. And that has impacted, for instance, the percent of kids who live less than 2 miles from school. So in 1970, there were a lot of neighborhood schools, and children lived within 2 miles. Now we're down to about 38% of kids live within 2 miles of school. So did children move away from the schools, or did the schools move? What's going on there? Well, what has happened is that And we don't see it so much on the peninsula. We're kind of landlocked here, and things aren't moving the way they are in other places. But what has happened is that in the suburbs, which is where the vast majority of children are these days, is that they are closing the 2 smaller local schools and opening 1 supersized school out on the edge of town. And so they're building it further away. Well, why is that? Well, you've just gone as a school administrator from having 2 principals to 1, 2 cleaning staffs to 1. You're consolidating a lot of costs. The downside is you're moving kids further away from school. That changes the context of the community. It changes the feel of the school. And it's been estimated that 25% of morning rush hour traffic is taking kids to school. So it also kind of gets to environmental impact as well. So in the short run, schools are doing this to contain costs. Education has taken a lot of hits, but it does take a toll. And in general, smaller and local schools have been shown over and over again. They increase academic performance. They improve student health and safety. They're helping California meet environmental goals. So again, this is a discussion we can spend half a day just on this because it has far-reaching implications. But what I want to focus on today is kind of where the state is in thinking about this. This is the screenshot from the Department of Architecture for the state. And it lists all the things that they consider when they consider siting a school. They look at indoor environmental quality, energy, water, materials, community matters. That's an interesting tab. They talk about how a school can really revitalize a community. And when you close the school down and move it, that the community tends to start to deteriorate. There's a lot of vandalism, et cetera. So they are aware of how the presence or absence of a school changes the tenor of the community. They talk about student performance and everything. What's missing there? Health. They don't talk about, they're not thinking about where a school is sited, how does that impact health? And this is where our opportunity is. I really think that physicians and public health professionals need to start interacting with urban architects and the people who plan these things to talk about think about where you're putting your school and how's that going to impact physical activity levels and how's that going to impact the childhood obesity. Because we have not been communicating as fields. And as a result, we see what we have. So I think that there is great opportunity, and why there's great opportunity, this is one of our opportunities for advocacy here. There is a school facility planning division within the state. It's under the state superintendent of schools that is interested in looking over the regulations that they have concerning site selection and planning. So the state is interested in looking at this. And a letter was sent to that head of that division from the Ad Hoc Coalition in Healthy School Siting. So it's a group of different advocacy groups that have gotten together. It's Kids First, it's Healthy Cities, a couple of different groups up at Berkeley, different centers at Berkeley. Public Health Institute, Advocacy, or the Alliance for Justice. A lot of different groups have gotten together. And there was one medical group, and it was the Chapter 1 of the American Academy of Pediatrics. But other than that, no other medical groups have gotten involved. And I called and talked to the leader of this coalition. He was really excited for the idea of, number one, to have the entire AAP for California in support of this. This is a statewide school issue for California. So it really should be the entire AAP voice that is joining this. So our action items here today, I'd like to request in public here that the Center for Healthy Weight join this coalition. I think it makes sense and something that we could do. And we've drafted a letter here that asks the American Academy of Pediatrics at the district level, so that represents all 4 chapters, to join the coalition. So we have a letter asking them to do that, and this issue has been put on the next state government affairs agenda. And I'll be presenting this to them at that point with your signatures, just kind of explaining why we think this is important and hopefully asking them to add their voice to this coalition. They really felt like more physicians involved in this would really add a strong voice in terms of getting the state's attention. Closely related to that clearly is walkable communities. The impact of how far your school is, whether or not you can walk your kids to school, has to do with distance, but there are also other barriers involved. This is actually a picture in Monterey County and a result of Marilyn Winkleby's work. Many of you know Marilyn Winkleby, whose office is over in Hoover, and she's been very involved in Monterey County and changing a lot of the community norms there in terms of walkability. So Safe Routes to School has been the big group that has worked on this. It is an international movement. It has taken hold in communities throughout the United States. And they like to cite that in 1969, 50% of the kids walked to school, and now it's a little over 10%. So there's been just a huge change. Again, our day-to-day lives, we're not exercising. So Safe Route to School, in California, legislation was passed in 1999, and the goal had 2 two goals: to reduce injuries and to increase walking. And every other year, more or less, you can see the bill history there, it's been reauthorized, and I'm happy to say it was just reauthorized last fall and went into effect January of '08. So this is funding that goes down to help improve infrastructure so kids can walk to school. So they fund 5 different types of infrastructure improvements, including things like helping sidewalks, traffic calming, so that's like speed bumps, installation of traffic signals, pedestrian bicycle crossing improvements, etc. Most of these end up targeting elementary schools. And this funding actually comes mostly from the federal government. It comes through the Department of Transportation. This program has been evaluated, and it has shown that it has increased the number of kids walking where these projects have taken place. And you have to remember that the increase in amount of kids walking is against the background noise of kids, fewer and fewer walking. So it's even more of a significant finding. It was, like I said, the most recent iteration was signed last October and goes into effect in January. And I don't know that there's a lot of action items here, but I wanted to say that if there are people here who are working with community groups where there is a barrier to the kids walking, so there's a disrupted sidewalk, etc., all it takes to get this money to get that fixed is a community group needs to write a grant. And you work with Joyce. She says it's very easy. Show me that there's a community that cares and that they can get kids walking. And you write a grant, and we have funds sitting. We've just got reauthorized. We're sitting here with funds ready to fix your sidewalks or put in a speed bump or whatever. So this is really doable. It just takes some community cohesion to get it going. So I think this is a great opportunity for students, if they're looking for a project, et cetera, to work with the community to try to change some infrastructure to get kids walking.
Where do the funds go to this? To the schools or to the?
No, I don't know. I think they go to probably whoever's responsible for fixing it, like the city or whatever. But she said that they have more funding than grants, so it's something I think that's quite doable. Yeah, Fernando.
In terms of safety, since it's not just the sidewalk, but
right.
Who else is on the sidewalk? Yeah. Is there anything that this could extend to that area in terms of police support?
Yeah, I don't know how limited they are. I mean, these are the kinds of things that they have funded in the last 8 years, so I'm not sure if they would fund like more police or whatever, but it'd be worth asking. She was very easy to talk to. So, something I hadn't known about. Okay, so ultimate stealth interventions. Let's talk about reforming agriculture policy. And basically what we're talking about is changing the norms of food production. So the Farm Bill, many of you may have heard about the Farm Bill. It's officially the Farm Security and Rural Investment Act, also known as the Farm Bill. It's the most recent incarnation of US government assistance to domestic farmers. And this is a bill that has 10 different areas, 10 different overarching things. And it just really makes my head hurt. This is a super complicated, super large bill. And these are the 10 different areas that are involved. And a lot of what I'm going to be telling you, I'm basically channeling Michael Pollan. I don't know if you all know Michael Pollan, but he's a professor of journalism up at Berkeley who writes extensively about nutrition and food and the systems involved in that. So that being said. So why are we talking about the Farm Bill in terms of childhood obesity? You kind of have to go back and understand really what has changed in the last 30 years and how the Farm Bill has impacted what's in our grocery stores. So I'm going to start with a really cool experiment or research project that was done by a researcher at the University of Washington. And he went to the store and he said, what will $1 buy you? And basically what he found is $1 will buy you about 1,200 calories in cookies and chips or 250 calories in terms of carrots. And so, okay, so you've eaten your cookies and chips and you're thirsty. It'll buy you 875 calories of soda or 170 calories of orange juice. And so, obviously, when you look at this and you think about the reality that a lot of people are on really tight budgets, I mean, we are creating this system where if you're going to try to, provide for your family, you're kind of reduced to having to do this because fruits and vegetables and juices are very expensive. So that information is important. Okay, so when I was looking for $1 to cut and paste on here, there's a way you can fold a $1 bill to turn it into a shirt. And I just thought that, I was like, wow, that's just it. And this version makes a necklace. So anyway, if somebody's bored, you can get out $1 and just the stuff you find when you're looking just to cut and paste the image of $1. So why is it? Why is it that we can get this many calories in junk food and not in the other? I mean, let's take the example of a Twinkie. What's a Twinkie? A Twinkie is basically a corn. It's soybeans, it's oil from soybeans and wheat. It has 39 different ingredients, and a lot of those ingredients are highly technical and manufactured. It's very marketed, it's put in really fancy packaging, and it's more expensive than a bunch of carrots. Okay? I'm sorry, it's cheaper than a bunch of carrots. So a bunch of roots that has no packaging, no marketing, no nothing is more expensive than this Twinkie. Why is that? Well, it's because these are the crops that are subsidized through the Farm Bill. Corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, and rice. So the government pays farmers per bushel to produce these kinds of crops. And as a result, we have an overabundance of them. So what have we done? We've turned the corn into high fructose corn syrup. We've turned the soybeans into hydrogenated oils. We've turned them into these non-healthful products and created an enormous industry to infuse these into Twinkies. Try to buy English muffins that don't have high fructose corn syrup. I challenge you, it can't be done. It's in everything that we eat. And so we have these unnecessary calories that have been infused into all of our products, and that is additive. And that is the culture that we're living in. And those are the kinds of things that are tipping the scales, no pun intended, to create these issues. Crops that are not being subsidized, fruits and vegetables. So if this were to change, it would really help California, because most of the fruits and vegetables come from the Central Valley, from California. So this is something that actually Governor Schwarzenegger is very interested in, the Farm Bill. And a lot of people think this really shouldn't be called the Farm Bill. This should be called the Food Bill, because this is not really just about farms. It is about the fact that what the Farm Bill does in its subsidies of these commodities is to change the way that all of us eat. And so it really changes our food system. Change in prices, another way to illustrate it. Between 1985 and 2000, the price of fruits and vegetables, the real price when you adjust for inflation, has gone up 40% for fruits and vegetables. The cost of soda has gone down 22% in that time. So again, the things that are healthy are relatively becoming more expensive, and the things that are cheaper and infused, basically soda is basically high fructose corn syrup. I mean, you're basically drinking corn. It's liquid corn that you're drinking when you're drinking soda. This is a whole industry that has been built around this policy, and it is making us sick. So reform to the Farm Bill or Food Bill, what can we do? The reform aims to increase access to high-quality, fresh, and healthy foods for all Americans, support family farms, promote local food systems and connections to regional agriculture, and leave a legacy of healthy land, water, and air for our children. So it's a bit audacious, but there is a lot of movement. And I think in the big picture, the Farm Bill is not a bill that anyone has ever really looked at before. Every time it comes up for reauthorization, there's a handful of senators and representatives who really care about it and who really get it, because it is very complicated. This year, it has had a ton of press coverage as the public health groups have really come to understand how important it is. So there is a shift there. People are paying attention. And I think there are some opportunities, but it's still an uphill battle. So where is the food bill right now? Just as you guys remember, bills go to the Senate and the House, and then they, in the committee, this is pictures of committee buildings, committee meetings, they're voted on in the appropriate committee, and then they go to the entire floor if they don't die in committee to be voted on. And then at the end, so what has happened, it has gone through the Senate. The food bill has gone through the Senate and passed its version. The House has done the same thing with its version. And when you have two different versions of a bill, it has to go to conference committee. Okay? So the bill right now is sitting in conference committee. And where they are literally is that they have named the senators to go onto this committee. The House members have yet to be named. So they name about 10 or 12, I don't know, to go from each house to reconcile the bill and make them look alike enough. Then once that reconciled bill happens, it goes back to the houses to be voted on by their bodies. If they are passed in both places, it goes to the president. So what does the bill, again, so we really are dealing with two bills that have been passed right now, but the best way I can summarize it for you is that commodities are pretty much unchanged. So commodities, meaning the subsidization that we do for those 5 crops, have pretty much been unchanged. There were a couple attempts, a couple different amendments. The big one people talked about was the Dorgan-Grassley Amendment, which was trying to limit those subsidies to those farmers and to those farms, and basically they haven't passed. But what Bush has said is that he supports a limit on these subsidies, and he would limit any subsidies to farmers making over $200,000 a year. There currently is no limit. So he has come out in support and said, I'll veto anything that doesn't have some sort of commodity reform in it. But the Senate and the House are having a really hard time doing that because there are some very powerful people who don't want that to happen. Other things, there are other important parts of that bill. Go back to those 10 different titles. Geographic preference, healthy food. Geographic means that schools can access local food. Healthy food enterprise means local food systems for underserved communities. They can use things like farmers markets, et cetera, support for those. Increase in the food stamp program, that's a big thing for the House right now. They really want to support that. They think it needs to be increased to meet inflation and to make it more permanent. Livestock competition title that helps small ranchers compete with some of the large, well, what's been in the news recently, ranching kind of things. But Bush basically is threatening a veto. And so the reality politically may be that they just continue, just like he did with S-chip, they suspend it and continue it until the next administration and take it up again. So that's kind of where it is. I'm going to give Michael Pollan the last word on this, on commodities. As important as these programs are, the little programs about local food, et cetera, they are just programs, mere fleas on the elephant in the room. The name of that elephant is the commodity title, the all-important subsidy section of the bill. It dictates the rules of the entire food system. As long as the commodity title remains unchanged, the way we eat will remain unchanged. So it really is quite fundamental. Michael Pollan is coming and speaking at Stanford actually in the next few weeks, and we have some information on his coming if you're interested in that. So action item here, I've talked to our government relations and our media relations at Packard about the idea of writing an opinion editorial piece to talk about the things that recently have been in the press and about the meat packing issues, that kind of food and that kind of ranching and that kind of food system, clearly put tons of food right into the school food system, et cetera, and that we really, I think you could tie that into talking about the Farm Bill and how important that is for childhood obesity. So if anyone here is interested in writing an opinion editorial piece with me, I would be interested in doing that with you. So let me know. Media Relations says they will support us, and we would be looking at trying to send it to one of the really large papers, the Post or the Times. So kind of trying to draw things to a close here. I think what we're looking at is kind of at the top, and the big fish there is obesity. It's kind of beating us down. The little fish there are those of us who are working every day to address this, the different after-school programs, et cetera, and we're kind of losing the battle. But the tide is turning, and I think the tide is turning through the legislation that Michelle and Sophia have talked about and the big picture policies that I've talked about. And I think once those policies get changed, things will start to streamline, and we really can turn the corner on this. So significant legislation has been underway at local, state, and federal levels to address the root causes of obesity. Culture shifts will happen, and the environment will change. There's no question about that. The question is what direction it will go. Is it going to go and take into account health and the public's health or not? And we need to start adding our voice to that conversation when it comes to where we build things, how we design cities. We need to incorporate, our daily lives need to incorporate activity and healthy food. And as a result, the entire population will be healthier. And the Center for Healthy Weight will continue to be involved in the discussion. And as physicians and medical personnel, we have a unique and strong voice to add. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to take some action with us today. So I like to conclude with a quote, "To reach port we must sail, sometimes with the wind and sometimes against it, but we must not drift or ever be an anchor," by Oliver Wendell Holmes. And I think that the tide really is turning, the winds are shifting, and so it's an exciting time for us all to be here. So thank you very much for your attention. If people have questions, we're happy to stay around afterward. Thank you.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Stanford University. Please visit us at stanford.edu.